Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this edition of Leak Project. I'm your host, Rex Bear, and we have Jenny Moonstone with us. Now, we're going to dive deep into the what some people call occult, the unknown information, mysticism, etc. There is a gentleman that walked the earth for 49 years. His name was Franz Bardon. And Franz Bardon is, in my mind, one of the greatest Jedis to ever walk the face of the earth. This guy was so powerful with mysticism and his mind, what he calls hermetics, being able to do things with the mind that people would call magic or woo-woo. Yet in his mind, it's a representation of an extension of the mind. It's kind of like somebody that is a bodybuilder. Well, he was a mental bodybuilder, and he was the Guinness World Records holder. This guy literally was kidnapped by Hitler because Hitler thought that his abilities to change and manipulate time and matter via thought, via mind, he had him kidnapped and one of his disciples, and they almost escaped when one of his disciples did a magic spell, which they call the true Kabbalah, speaking words into reality. They almost got away, but the soldiers were able to snap out of the spell. And it wasn't Franz Bardon that cast that spell. He talks very deep about how if you do create a spell of any form, you need to know the consequences of the very end. So he put together several books, and one of those books, and there's this stinking nano fly that's flying around me. They always pick the best times, I swear. But this is Initiation into Hermetics. This is the best book I have ever read on magic. I mean, this is like an entire library of information on true mental abilities, not dogmatic practices as like sacrificial rites or anything like that. This is mental. This is all mental powers, and it's called Hermetics. And Jenny Moonstone, the funny thing about Jenny is, I swear, she's like my long-lost sister or something. We just have these really strong connections on Franz Bardon, on different things out there, and she's also very good at explaining the way that these hermetics work and magic and mind power. And we're also going to get into Hollywood and the way that Hollywood and the industries out there use different types of magic, not for your benefit, for their benefit. So if you know what to look for, and if you learn how to expand the mind to the point of where you can actually create certain things with the mind, I mean, talk about manifestation, folks. Literally, the day before, I'm talking about Jay and Silent Bob on Clerks, and then I meet an artist at a bar that gives me this painting. I mean, it was just, how cool is that? So we're going to have her on the show tomorrow, manifestation of your reality. But Jenny, it's awesome to have you on the show here with us at Leak Project. How the heck are you?
Oh, thanks, Rex. I'm really good. That was awesome. Thank you so much. As always, you make my job very, very easy. Franz Bardon. Just really quick, like my experience with him, I actually didn't come into his writings, any of his literature or influence until later in life. I'm talking like just a few years ago, 24, 25. But like you, Initiation into Hermetics just really changed the game. I'd never read anything like it before. And arguably, it's one of the best pieces of literature on Hermetics in publication that's ever been written. And just, him as a person, you can't help but get to know him or get a really good sense of who he is and his character just by reading the words that he's poured out into these pages. I mean, the man was just, he was on every level, he was just ascended. He was an ascended person. And, you have to wonder what he was offered, what the Nazi occultists put on the table for him in exchange for his collaboration during the war. He was the best of his time and arguably the best ever. So of course his abilities, his knowledge was like currency. So you don't just kill a man like him. So, they kept him and they treated him badly, and he was detained, and surely he was, the price that he paid to be true to himself just speaks volumes about his character. And I think for anybody who wants to study Hermetics, which is a science, it's not even, some people would call it an art. but it's the real deal. It's not, it's
art and science. It's
right.
Science, but you can perform it with an art as well. That's the beauty of it.
That's the beauty of it. And it really merges everything all together. And, it's a test. And if you look at his writings and a lot of what was most important to him, like even the way he just, in the book, Initiation to Hermetics, he will go into such detail about the properties and qualities of each element, the magnetic fluids, the electric fluids, and he will assign specific practices and exercises and meditations just so that the student can acclimate themselves and get the mind up to speed with these concepts. But it has to be done in increments. So he'll say, okay, in the book, he'll say, okay, until you've mastered exercise A, B, and C, don't go any further. Don't read any further. Of course, you do read further because it's an amazing book and you can't put it down. But what it goes to show is that he put such an emphasis on discipline and on the cleanliness of the mind and of the body in order to be, the best magician that you can be. Because that's essentially what he was. He was a magician. He was a mentalist. He was an alchemist. So he was a really fascinating character. And what I hope we're going to get into at some point is kind of how Hermetics is being used against us now in society and in the media and Hollywood. And also how, even though he resisted the Nazis, Hermetics and occultism was used and utilized anyways by the Nazi factions, and then given to the U.S. government in a pretty package. And then, the CIA took these, these secrets, this occult science, all of it, and they mistreated it. And I think that's really just what we're seeing. And I think we can have a really great conversation about it.
Oh, absolutely. And let's do this also. I just want to give people that are listening, if you haven't heard of Franz Bardon, and if you're interested in expanding the mind and reaching higher levels of consciousness, I'm just going to give you a few chapter titles on, because Jenny brought up a really good point. You can read the whole book, and he'll even say, go ahead and read the whole book if you want to, but if you don't, before you practice all of the different steps, but you're only going to be able to, it's going to be like studying something. It's going to be like reading something. You're not going to be able to just read it and say, wow, I can automatically create something out of thin air. I can automatically have an out-of-body experience because I read about it. And he explains that. And, for example, the first thing he talks about even is your different hand gestures and what each limb represents, what your right index finger represents. And if you point at a specific direction, and then he gets into the fire element, the water element, the earth element, the air element, and then you've got even an element above that. But let me give you a quick example here. The initiation in just one theory here. The elements, the principles of fire, water, air, earth, light, the Akashic records or etheric principle, karma, the law of cause and effect, the human being, the body, and what each body part represents, and then how you can actually manipulate each body part once you learn how to control the principles of fire, water, air, and earth. And there's different steps that he gives you to practice these applications. And once you can do it for 10 minutes at a time, remember, Jenny, how he talks about if you can clear the mind and just clear the mind and think of nothing for even 10 seconds, you're above 99% of the population. Right. And that's a keystone right there. That's like a pivotal point. That is a cornerstone to understanding these practices and these applications. The law of cause and effect, the human being, the diet, the occult anatomy of the body, the physical material plane, and the physical material world. Then the soul or the astral body, the astral plane, the spirit, the mental plane, truth, religion, God, assertion. Now, here's another thing that's really interesting as well, is his representation of God. Franz Bardon had a lot of Christian roots. I mean, you could definitely tell when you read his works. He's a Christian, and that's awesome. And I think that also points a key for those out there that are Christian or have a certain religious belief, and to think that studying parts of the mind is something dark or demonic and only the devil can give you those powers. Or, I think that you're selling yourself short. And, people like Franz Bardon proved that even when he was kidnapped by Hitler and his life was in danger, he didn't change. He still stayed with what he felt was right and the light and source and Christ in his mind. And he also talks about if you're raised a certain religion And let's say 10 years down the road, your mind just shatters that paradigm, that religion, like what happened to me, ladies and gentlemen. My mind has been completely, when it comes to religion, I mean, it's out there. I mean, it will never be what it used to be, the way that I used to think. And there could be implications in the spiritual realm that might be difficult for me because of that. And he also discusses that. He says that, if you were raised Christian and then, you 50 years from now, 10 years from now, you change that belief, it's going to be more difficult for you to understand source when you get to the next level, because oftentimes people, the source to them, they're creating source in their own mind, what God is supposed to be, what Jesus is supposed to be, what their Savior is supposed to be. And so he's really good at, saying stick with your roots, stick with your principles and stuff to kind of help people. But at the same time, his abilities and his works are just phenomenal. And you're right, Jenny, there's so much of what he has written about that these institutions and organizations and companies that have so much money, more money than some countries, use against us for their own benefit. So let's get into that. What are some of the things that you see and you realize when you turn on the TV, when you turn on the radio, that they're just throwing right in your face?
Sure. Well, I've come on the show before and I've talked about MK Ultra. I know a lot of your listeners know what MK Ultra is. I'm not going to give a background on that because we know, at this point we know. But I think, everything kind of ties into this mass hypnosis, kind of these spells. I call them spells because when we turn on the TV or we turn on the radio, what we're being subjected to are, frequencies, the spoken word, or, colors and symbols. And that's essentially all that is just a form of large scale magic. It can be argued. So I think, what I've noticed is like a huge influx of shows on primetime television. A really good example is one called The Magicians. The tagline is "Fantasy Gets Real." Now that's just one example, but for years now, what I've seen is more these themes of occult being aimed at younger and younger audiences. So there are some shows on the Disney Channel where it's called Descendants. And what they are, these kids are in this really prestigious school. It's make-believe, but they're descendants of the Disney villains. And they're all practitioners of dark arts. And my thing with this now, and we kind of get into some Blavatsky stuff here. This is a fusion. So please, and I know you like Blavatsky too. So, Blavatsky had this thing about races, and I might be misinterpreting her theosophy really is what it was. But I think that she told us a little bit about races being incarnating onto the planet and each one being more sophisticated than the one that came before. And I think that we can translate that, and the Nazis took that and ran with it and created a desecration of her teachings, and she would be horrified if she knew, and I'm sure she does know. But I think that, and we've talked about this before, this theme of upgrades taking place and the collective conscious becoming more receptive and more advanced as we move through this timeline, things are changing. And I think that we can talk about the control faction. So we'll call them the letter agencies, the cabal, whatever you want to call them. I think that they set traps for us, for members, for people of this awakened population that ascended when we did, that incarnated when we did. And they knew that there was going to come a time when there was such a receptive group of people in the population that what these shows are is a trick. It's a misdirection. They knew that there would come a time that people were thirsty, dehydrated for esoteric knowledge. And now what they're doing, and that there would be a void, a wanting, a yearning for something more, because naturally that's where we're at as a collective. And I think that they put they set these traps up so that they could insert their interpretation. So it's not that occultism is inherently good or bad. People have this misconception that it's automatically bad. What Franz Bardon taught us was that it's neither, and that good and bad is a construct of the mind. But whereas Franz Bardon emphasized discipline and spiritual consequence to everything, whether you're doing a positive spell or you're doing a banishment spell. He stressed the concept of spiritual repercussion. There's a consequence to everything that's just physics. And in contrast to that, what we have is this reckless misuse of occultism in these shows and these movies that are being shoved down the throats of younger and younger generations that naturally are born with this desire to hydrate themselves with esoteric knowledge, but they're being tricked into misusing and redirecting their abilities, because we all have inherent abilities, but they're being tricked into using it into something that's reckless. And it's not about the collective, it's about personal gain. So Franz Bardon had always said, it doesn't matter how powerful you are after years and years of practice. Don't use this for greed. Don't use this to attract a lover. Just don't do it, because, when you align yourself well enough, you don't need to do magic anymore. Your knowing is enough. And that's not to say that he wasn't, he was obviously a practitioner, but, what I see now is such a far cry from his teachings and his, he erred with caution. He said, everybody, with great power comes great responsibility. And I think that what we're seeing now with all the superhero movies and everybody's a magician, everybody's a witch and a warlock, they are setting people up for failure, for huge spiritual ramifications. And that's just large scale. That's not even talking about, the Nazi scientists that were, their records were whitewashed and expunged, and they just moved from Nazi to NASA and the CIA and Project Paperclip. That's something even more specific. I'm talking about mind control on a mass scale with these shows. And it's confusing to kids that are looking for answers, and they know that they have these inherent abilities, but they're being told that it's okay to be evil. It's okay to use magic for your own gain. And that's why I think, this book is just his character. It's Franz Bardon's character. I trusted him as a teacher. And even though he's long since passed, I still feel that he's around and that he's assisting those of us that are really working to kind of raise things up and fix this mess. Would you agree, Rex?
Wow, I think what you said was so powerful. And, I would say that I agree, because here's the thing that I find fascinating. And when somebody passes physically, their energy goes somewhere. So they're just not in the physical body anymore. Now, where does it go? What does it do? What is it at that point? I don't know. What I do feel is we're here to learn. And the more we learn, the more we spiritually evolve as well. So let's say that in this life, we learn everything in this book and we actually learn how to do all this stuff. Well, then your spirit at that point has a lot of knowledge. I mean, so in essence, I guess you could be of a higher self, of a higher existence than somebody that just keeps going on to planet Earth to suck down diet sodas and argue with somebody about a football team. And hey, that doesn't mean they're a bad person by any means. It just means that maybe they're not meant to go to a certain level, or maybe that's where they want to be. I mean, maybe that's where they're happiest. So, people like you, like me, and others that listen to Leak Project, we like to learn. We like to find things that aren't within the parameters and within the box. We like to look outside of the box. And that's one thing that Franz Bardon is so good at doing, is describing things outside of the box. And I just want to give you guys a quick example. Once you learn, I mean, this is only halfway through the book. Once you get to this level, he teaches you how to create elementals. And if anybody has ever heard of an elemental, some people might create them without even knowing it, just because of the amount of energy that they put into things. But you can consciously create these elementals, which can in return kind of do certain things for you. And I have never wanted to create one, because he even describes that if you create an elemental, you have to put a expiration date on it. And I don't feel comfortable about that. So that's like saying, okay, I'm going to make something conscious, but you've only got 50 years to do this. And then you have to go back into the Akashic records or whatever. So, but there's people that do this. And there's a lot of speculation about people like Chris Angel, and how obviously a lot of stuff he does is just trick of the mind and trick of the camera, but he does some pretty far out there stuff. David Blaine and stuff. Do they have elementals? Do they have certain archetypes that they have created, mental archetypes, to find things for them and harness things for them. One thing that I used to really get into, and I might start doing it again here, is consciousness projection, where I would project my consciousness into like another animal, or even in like a rock, or just something, and you would feel that consciousness. You would every sense that you can harness, you imagine being that object. And it gets scary how accurate and how good you can get at it. And I quit doing it for a while, because I remember I used to work for this Fortune 100 company, and we would have these trainings where they would have, the people up in front saying, okay, what did you do yesterday? And this is how you can improve. And you need to do this because, that'll improve the bottom line. And I won't get into details and stuff, but they were basically like master manipulators. And they would try and teach others how to do manipulation and stuff like that. And I would get into people's minds, not even wanting to. I would just kind of wander into people's minds. And I remember this gal that used to work up at the front. A lot of people would say she was probably very pretty, and I would like tap into somebody else's consciousness while they were staring at her, and I'd be like, ew, get out of here, man. I just wouldn't be able to do it. So I kind of like backed off doing that kind of stuff because I started to get, anyway. So, but it's incredible how powerful, seriously, this book is, guys. If you want to get into some really cool stuff and learn about yourself and mental abilities, and man, maybe I should call up the publisher and see if they'll give me some money for promoting them, because I'm not getting a dime for promoting this. I mean, this is really good stuff. I mean, this is literally my favorite book of all time when it comes to learning how to understand things around you, what's being thrown in front of you all the time, and what are some other things that you think have really helped you out as well, Jenny, with kind of learning the elements and stuff with this book that helps you see out and understand everything around you?
Yeah. Sure. Well, what really set this, the Initiation into Hermetics book, it's not just a book, it's an experience. It's like a key. And, it took me a while to finish the book. I had to take it in increments. You can read a chapter and then need a few days to kind of process everything. And you have to go over it over and over again. And each time there's something new. But at the same time, the way that I absorbed the information, it wasn't as if I was learning something, but rather relearning it or remembering it. So it's almost like it just felt so real and so true that it felt a lot like coming home to myself, like I'd been lost, and that, like an old friend kind of like opened the door for me and was like, you really do know, you just needed to remember. And I know other people have had that same experience with this material. But I do, before I lose my train of thought, I did want to talk, because you talked about the elementals. You can create, you can animate. We have that ability. We're creators. We manifest things. That's what we do. But there's always a very important concept of spiritual responsibility, and that like you said, there's an expiration date on it. These things, they're like contracts, and when you leave them open-ended, you really open yourself up to some pretty intense spiritual karma, which is why it was so important to Franz to only give this information to worthy people, to people that weren't gonna trash it. So what we see happening now is just a desecration, because ultimately what happened is that Hermetic studies, Hermetic science did fall into the hands of the CIA and various agencies. And what they did was they saw an opportunity to utilize and to map out human consciousness using magic, but black magic, because the subjects that they, that they magically experimented on, they could not give their consent. They had no understanding of it. A spiritual initiation is supposed to be a life-changing event that aligns you with your highest truth and sets you on your path. But when you lay this spiritual groundwork on a 7-year-old child, for example, who is not prepared, who is not initiated, has no understanding of what's happening to them, it's it's probably the most detrimental thing for both the child or the subject and also the person who is conducting the ritual or the experimentation, because you now have taken on a spiritual responsibility that you can't, you just wrote a check that you can't cash, sort of thing. And that's kind of almost this sort of solace that I take, is that like all this evil has happened and all of these people have been hurt by the misuse of Hermetic science, but that there are higher powers at work, seeing to it that things are leveled, that things are equalized. And that's why I think it's so important that intelligent, strong, grounded, moral people learn about these teachings, learn about true Hermetics, read Initiation into Hermetics, and see, the amazing manifestation power of, an awakened population, of a strong person.
One of the things that I wanted to add to that, and you're so spot on, is Hermetics is a lot different than ritualistic magic. I'm reading through some of the comments here and people are going, rituals, what, huh? Okay, so Hermetics is mental exercises. For example, clearing the mind, or focusing on one specific thought, or transferring your consciousness, or learning how to literally create physical heat in your body at certain body parts, or even creating physical heat inside of a room that you're in, to the point to where other people are feeling it. And if you think that that's a conspiracy, ladies and gentlemen, there are plenty of monks out there and people that have proven this. They will go outside the coldest night of the year. It's a yearly ceremony, and you will see these Westerners, people like me, with big coats on and stuff, recording, freezing our butts off while they're sitting down in a robe and the snow around them is melting. And you can see that they're breathing, and the breathing is crystallizing because it's that cold. And they're literally changing the environment. So your thoughts are extremely powerful. And you brought up some very good points. With great power comes great responsibility. When you learn how to mentally harness these, if you start thinking something that's negative and you've got that mind to where it manifests much faster than somebody else, well, then you really have to be on that path, because then you're going to start creating these obstacles in front of you that you don't even realize because of your mental abilities and what you're thinking. And if you're constantly around negative environments, where, that's one thing that I've talked to Jenny about before, is because, Jenny is so passionate about exposing these sickos out there that she puts a lot of time and effort into researching that. And it can also, when that's what you're researching constantly, it can have a physical impact on your body, because you're absorbing all that negativity by all that research that you're doing. And sometimes even then you have to back off and take a break and just say, hey, look, man, I got to, get back into my own element and have good thoughts and good vibes, and realize there's detectives and police officers and people out there that have a responsibility and a job to take care of that. Mm-hmm. So, and you're doing a good job giving them the information by saying, hey, here you go. Here's the information, take it where you will, and uncover what's on the dark side of the beast there. So I'm so glad we decided to do this today on, what I feel is kind of higher vibrational things, such as thinking how to change the future, how to change things for the better, and learn what's being used against you, like what you're talking about, what's being used against children. And then, if you have kids, you can teach them what to look for and teach them what not to watch and what to watch, etc. It's all so valuable. And, let's go back into the Hermetics thing, though. So let's jump back into Hermetics and ritualistic magic and the Kabbalah and chaos magic and different types of magic, because there's many different forms of magic, just like math. You have ritualistic magic, which if you do ever decide to get into the practice of magical evocation, they've got books on that where you can learn about the circle, the wand, the sword, the robe, and what all of these elements actually mean at the mental level. Now, I've never really been into that kind of stuff, because it's just, first of all, I don't want to have to wear a robe and do a bunch of different dogmatic principles to get a certain result. I would rather just think it in my mind. But when you do these certain evocations and you practice certain dogmatic rituals, what it does is it takes your mind into a certain place that will then have a much better ability to then create what you are attempting to manifest. And if you know much about astrology, or if you know much about frequencies and vibrations and where a planet is at a specific time will create a specific vibration. Well, you can also get into when to perform a certain ritual, at what day. Like if you want to perform a ritual of kindness, it's probably not the best thing to do it on the day of war, which represents Mars. So you can also learn about the days and the different elements. It's incredible. But what do you think is key to kind of really getting a good base to start dabbling into things that become more powerful so that you're on track and you don't lose balance?
Right. Well, I certainly wouldn't dabble.
Dabble, just a dibble dabble.
No, like, okay. So, Franz often said that he was very picky. He was very choosy about his students. It really is a level of maturity. It takes a level of like soul maturity even to kind of like take this and do the responsible thing with it. And, what's interesting too is that I only recently discovered, he actually reached out to the polar opposite of himself, who was Aleister Crowley. And he actually, I know, I thought that was really weird too, because, he kind of represents, the other side of the spectrum in terms of, using magic to one's own end.
I was like, just do whatever you want, man. He used to invoke demons within the circle.
Right.
Just to see what would happen.
Just to see what would happen. And this kind of, listen, but there are consequences to everything. You don't poke around in that world without bringing a lot onto yourself. And Aleister Crowley certainly experienced that. But what I thought was interesting was that I got the sense of this almost like professional courtesy that all of these big names had for each other. And, ritual magic and Hermetics, obviously it's all, there's so many variations. There's so many different, styles to it all. And, for me, I think my favorite part of it really, and kind of how I got started, was the idea or the concept of gods and goddesses. That really kind of set me on this, quest. It ignited these questions that I had about the nature of demigods, the nature of gods and goddesses and entities. That brought me into the spirit realm. That brought me, the mind sphere, the astral realm. That took me into asking all these questions about, well, what are these elementals in comparison to us? Where do we fit in? Where do they fit in? And I think the most profound thing that I've managed to discover is that we really are kind of all made up of the same stuff, and that link, or that whatever separates, whatever makes us feel separate, is just a construct of the mind. And that's why for a seasoned veteran magician such as Bardon, it's so easy for him to connect, because he knows that we're omnipotent. In essence, fundamentally, we're all over the place. And that, for me, just kind of that knowing that there really is no limit, that was what served. That was what the base was for me, was just knowing that this power ran through my veins and it would breathe through my skin. And it wasn't something that I needed to, make a blood offering to some god over here in order to achieve. I didn't have to read a million books. It's just something that one day you understand that you're part of something magical, and that's what existence is, and that there are ways to manipulate it for the good of all people. And that's essentially what the Magician, which is actually the first card of the tarot, well, it depends what deck, because I have the Thoth deck and it actually starts at 0, which is the Fool. But the Magician being, the master who has mastered the elements. And that's, that's essentially what it is. And that's what I think is fundamental to all forms of magic is the understanding of the elements and the properties and the qualities that each possess, and how it coordinates each part of the body, like you said. The index finger and like the middle big toe, they have different correlations. Like it's almost alchemical. It's almost, you know what I mean? It's just fascinating, and there's nothing dark about it unless that's what you project. So magic is really very telling. At the end of the day, you can really know somebody by what they, what they've done with it. People really kind of wear it on their faces. If somebody's into black magic, you pretty much just know I mean, I would know, you know what I mean? But yeah, it's a great, you know, it's a great world to dive into if you're ready.
Let me ask you a question about that, because one thing that I have noticed about you is you were extremely in tune with people's energies. Like you can pick up on people's energies in another state. I mean, I mean, you've really gotten to that point. So when did you get to that level? Have you always been there and it's just taken a while to, you know, kind of blossom? Or?
Well, thank you for asking me that, because, you know, the great thing about these interviews is that I don't know how to answer things until I get the right question. You know what I mean? So thank you. For me, I've always been this way. I've always had that inherent ability, like so many people that I know. But for many, many years, I didn't know what it was, how to control it. And even more so, the people around me did not know what was going on or how to fix me or how to, you know, help me. And so for many years, it was suppressed by pharmaceutical drugs. I was put on pharmaceutical drugs and put into therapy, like intense therapy from the ages of 13 to 17. And for a long time, my abilities were, it was disastrous, to say the least, because my intuitive abilities were just, they were all over the place. Even one day I was walking through 5 realms. We're talking metaphorically here, so everybody can just calm down. You know,
5 realms, Jenny.
Yeah, I know it's kind of hard to understand, but I know a lot of people do understand that for a lot of people, this will manifest itself without the proper guidance, without assistance, and without support. This can manifest itself as, it looks a lot like mental illness. And it looks a lot like somebody is just going through, you know, they alienate themselves, they have a hard time. But it really helps when you read a book like Initiation into Hermetics that really validates everything that you always felt and everything you always knew to be true. And when you make that decision, and I say this to clients all the time, when you make a decision to pick up a book like that, and even like purchase, like the actual physical transaction of offering money in exchange for literature, that is a declaration to the universe that you are now ready and willing to take the next step to learn. And ultimately what this information does is bring you back to yourself. It's not about searching for, you know, almighty power in the arms of some distant God, or invoking, you know, everybody does with it what they choose to. And I'm not saying anybody's right or wrong, but for me, it was really about coming home to myself and doing what I can. It facilitated me into really owning my gifts, claiming my gifts for myself, and gave me confidence, which I'm still working on, to be able to share what I've learned through hardship and trial with other people, and maybe, you know, let people know that maybe what they're dealing with isn't depression or, you know, bipolar disorder and all kinds of things like that. Maybe what you're dealing with is somebody who has a very powerful, intuitive, your psychic ability, you know, and there's all different kinds of psychic abilities. There's people that hear things, see things, smell things, taste things. There's all these different abilities that people have. And, you know, you mentioned my ability to pick up somebody's energy in another state. I felt that throughout my childhood, but I didn't know what it was. And honestly, I thought everybody else could feel that too. I thought that was just the way it was. I didn't know that there was any other way. So do you know what I mean? Like I didn't realize that I was different until they started telling me that you're different and there's something wrong with you. And then they tried to fix it with, you know, like every drug that you can think of. But yeah, you know, I go off and ramble. You know better than to ask me exploratory questions, Rex.
No, that was perfect, because you know what that's making me think of is I had a friend in high school that when he came back from his sophomore year, he came back and just something was different about him. And he would hear voices, and these voices that he heard, they were like attacking voices to him. They would say something like, you know, they would call him names and just the most vile things to him. And he would think like sometimes that I would say, like, did you just call me that? And I'd be like, what? What are you talking about? He's like, did you just call me that? And I'd be like, whoa, buddy. He's like, whoa, I'm sorry, man. And you think, okay, is it just your brain that has a chemical imbalance that causes you to hear things like that? Or is there maybe an outside influence that has found a way to channel through your brain? Because your brain is like it's a big meat modem, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, it's transferring data back and forth constantly. I mean, it is it's a solid hub point for data transfer. And it could be like a receiver, you could just be tuning. The tune could be off just a little bit. You could change the dial to 98.3 instead of 98.1, where it's maybe supposed to be at, so you don't hear those voices, because it just doesn't make logical sense to think about it from an aspect that it's just in your mind. It's from somewhere, because your mind is out here and my mind is out there. And, we're all in this quantum level together if you really break it down to the quantum level. And then you find those finite points that are bouncing in and out of the galaxy. That's like, where do they go and how do they come in and come out? So does that mean that we're all made up of molecules? So are we constantly going in and out of different dimensions? And that explains how we're kind of over there and down here, as above, so below, how it's all connected to the quantum level. And now I'm ranting for you. So
well, I love it. It's great.
Shapeshifters. Well, here's what I would like to do also is somebody made a comment that if there isn't such a thing as white or black magic. If you perform magic, you're acting as a god. Here's how I'm going to respond to that. Do you ever have thoughts that go into your head? Do you ever speak words? Do you move? Are you alive? You're a form of magic. So you are an abomination. Literally just the thought of something will alter the outcome of reality. No matter how minute, no matter how far in the distance it is, just a thought will change reality. Therefore, your thoughts are magic, ladies and gentlemen. You saying words are magic, ladies and gentlemen. Be careful what you think. Be careful what you say. You know the saying, be careful what you wish for, because you just might get it. And I was lucky enough to get a couple of really cool paintings the other day just thinking about it. So, now I'm going to start thinking, Ferrari. No, just kidding. Well, maybe. I'd rather have a Jeep Rubicon. Okay.
Yeah,
so
you can do better than a Ferrari. Ferrari. I want one of the new Teslas.
Hello.
I want like a hover car. I'm over the regular cars. Like, I know they've got better stuff. I know it. I know they do. I want
a flying car. How about forget the cars? I mean, if we can just create whatever we want.
Right.
Craft. Give me a jet, private jet. Bingo.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Now let's get into sorry. I'm divagating. People are like, Rex, shut up. Talk about. No, they're being good. They're being good. So what do you think is something that would be key in today's day and age? Just, a couple of things that people could do on a regular routine, not take too much time out of their daily schedule to make a positive impact for themselves and their family and friends.
Well, that's a really good question, Rex. And, it's one of those things where it's very much a matter of like, what you're supposed to do. It's really about doing it. And that's where like discipline and cleanliness of the body and the mind comes into play. I think that the most beneficial thing that I've found in terms of like expanding your awareness and also increasing intuitive abilities is that meditation. And you really don't need to buy a whole bunch of books, and you don't need to spend hours and hours researching. That's one thing for sure, is the internet will rush you. The internet will make you feel like you're running out of time, and that you need to like get on the ball and be up there with everybody else in terms of, truth, and, everybody's got a theory, and there's, this is how you do it, and this is how you do it, and hurry up, where have you been, sort of thing. And I think that that's just counterproductive to what we're doing. This is very much, the Hermit card from Tarot comes to mind. And this is very much your spiritual journey is your own journey. And I think, for me, it also helps because I have a million thoughts and I've got all kinds of, battles that I fight. And for me, I think what helps is to really just kind of slow it down. And the most powerful frequency that I have experienced, aside from, the unconditional love of mother and child, is the frequency of gratitude, and how just exuding just your thought, because like you said, the thought is tangible. We can't actually see it, but it is a measurable unit. You know what I mean? It's real energy. It's not make-believe. This is real. And, with the as above, so below, even though we can't see it manifesting in the 3D, how do you know that some awesome idea. For example, you have this awesome idea like 3 days ago, you wake up and you have an idea for a book or a film. That idea, that passion that it generates in your body and your spirit can take on an actual manifestation that you might not be able to see in 3D, but it takes life in the ethers because you are a creator, because you're a marvelous creator and you can have anything. And the establishment doesn't want us to remember our inherent abilities. Instead, what they do is they exploit us and they take the most gifted among us. They find us and they do horrible things in order to have a monopoly on that part of the human being, which is the part that creates. And so much so that I actually kind of realized recently from talks with people that the chakra system is actually an implanted lie. Because what it is, it's a half-truth. Okay, I see the finger.
Okay, I was literally just thinking about this yesterday and the day before about the chakra system.
Yeah.
And the reason I was thinking about that is because I talked to George Kavasilis. Man, 5 years ago, I remember, and 6 years ago, I interviewed George on a different platform. And it was just like a blockbuster interview. And I remember he was talking about the chakra system and how it was implanted via another entity. So, whether or not that's true or not, I don't know. But it's just the reason I put my finger up like that is because you started talking about it. And is that just another one of those synchronicities?
Yeah, it is.
Right there.
It's yeah, this happens all the time. And it's really good. I take it as confirmation that, this is, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And for me, that's all about the benefit, the greater good and voting, making a vote with your consciousness, right? So, the whole idea of the pineal system, the pineal gland, the third eye, more and more, I'm starting to think that that's a lie. And not that the pineal doesn't exist, because we know that it does exist, but it feels, from what I understand now, is that the chakra system as we know it in a lot of the new age, I'm not new age, I'm saying the new age communities will jump up and down about the chakras, right? Cleanse your chakras, balance your chakras, all of that. It's very popular. A lot of people have accepted it. And that alone makes me question it, because it's been so well received by so many people that my very skeptical mind goes to, well, maybe there's something missing here. Because what I understand about mass programming and mind control, both on the micro and the macro, is that they will layer this information. They will filter it. They'll filter real information, true information, something that is real enough for us to accept, something real enough for us to kind of buy. But then they'll put layers and layers on top of it that just limit us further and further. So the idea that you need to open your third eye in order to possess psychic sight, I think is just another form of limitation. You don't need to work for hours and hours on cleansing your pineal gland. It's not that complicated. I think it's far more simple than they'd have us believe. And even in the new age community, it's a freaking billion-dollar industry because everybody wants to go to the seminars and the talks and everybody wants to eat avocados. Like, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with a healthy lifestyle. It's what we want. But I also see how there has been huge, it's a campaign. And I question every hugely funded campaign that there is on the face of the earth. I have to question it because I know in my experience that the real truthers, nobody knows who Franz Bardon is. Nobody knows who he is. Why do you think that is? Because the man was full of truth. Because the man was telling you how it is. And so, the whole chakra thing, I think that it's an overcomplication. I also think it's very limiting because now you're telling people that they have these energy vortexes on their bodies through which divine energy can channel through, and the cleaner it is, the more higher functioning you are. When I really think that we're a lot bigger than that, and that the actual geometry of it looks different from what we have been led to believe. And I don't have those answers. I couldn't tell you right now exactly, the mechanics of it. Give me time. But I think in general, we're kind of on the same page with that. The whole, it's just it just feels like another package, like a package deal. And they know that people are thirstier and hungrier ever for esoteric knowledge. People are seeking, and we have the internet, and everybody's asking these questions. Doesn't it make sense to you that the controlling faction of this planet would put into place many traps in order to, even for the most advanced or intuitive person, something that will trick us? And then that's why I think that the most advanced intuitive people on the planet are taken and fiddled with and tinkered with, and because they are.
Jump in it.
Yeah.
Heidi Vandenberg
Yes.
is extremely good at reading somebody's star chart.
Yes.
Where, she'll say, okay, this person. She'll say this person was born at this time at this location, and then she'll pull up the chart with her software, and because she knows enough about the different planets and stuff like that in the houses, she can come up with a pretty good outline of what that person's going to be good at and what that person has opportunities with, let's just say. Instead of, like, once again, you use the word certain labels, say, oh, that guy has a problem. Instead of saying that guy has a problem, how about saying, that guy has an opportunity? Once again, it's just the whole mindset thing. So when you talked about the stars and stuff like that, where am I going with this? Dang it, I lost my train of thought. There was something important that I wanted to go with this on the stars and Franz Bardon and the alignments, and I can't remember where it was. So please keep talking, and it'll come to me.
Sure. No, and it's funny that you mentioned Franz and the stars, because from my understanding, whereas people like Aleister Crowley and a lot of ritual magicians like that, they need to employ the use of tools and the sacred circle and all these tools, all this fodder and glitz and glamour. Franz Bardon was, he liked to go outside at night and look at the stars, and that was his temple. He didn't actually possess all of these, he had experience with all of it, but he knew that all he needed was the stars and inspiration. And, yeah. Oh my gosh. Heidi Vandenberg. She's amazing. She's like the best ever. Channel 27. Check her out. She can read anybody. I actually really want to have her read Franz Bardon's chart. I can't believe that hasn't happened already.
Oh, I know. That'd be well. And there was a reason that I brought her up, and I think it had I think what it was when you were talking about the New Age stuff.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, but there's a lot of stuff that's labeled as New Age, which is far older than some Christian beliefs. Because that's one thing I hear a lot from Christians, bless their hearts, love you guys. They'll say stuff, and you know what's interesting is I get attacked more by Christians than just about anybody. They're like, Jesus loves you, but I want to kick your ass because you believe in the devil, you antichrist, man. You're reading from the devil. And all I'm doing is like reading these ancient Sumerian texts or like the Gnostic texts and just give my own interpretation. And people are like, you're going to hell, man. You better pray to Jesus now or you're going to burn forever. And I think go to hell just for the fun of it. Suffer. How you doing? It's like, and then I see these people that like pray to Jesus before they kick somebody's ass in these MMA fights. Come on, man. Jesus, help me kick this guy's ass. I want to punch him in the nose, man. He doesn't believe in you as much as I do.
Can I say something on that? I have to say, and I have noticed this, and I find it hilarious because it just goes to show, and listen, I don't care what you are, a Christian, a Muslim, agnostic, atheist, I don't care as long as your character is good.
Exactly.
Just to put that out there. But what I have found funny is just like you said, somebody will pray to Jesus, Jesus, Lord, please let me kick this guy's ass into next weekend. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of people praying to Jesus for like victory, and they pray to Jesus to, what's funny about Jesus is that Jesus is a healer. Jesus was a miracle worker. He was a healer. He was not a destroyer. And so when people pray to Jesus to grant him victory, he's just one, persona. He's an archetype. I'm not going to get into the argument about who Jesus was. This is just my understanding. But, there are deities, ascended masters, that are destroyers. So if you go into battle, you go into war, I'm not going to pray for Jesus's help. I'm going to pray for, somebody else who's going to, come in with the big guns and do the destroying work, because Jesus was never a destroyer. He's a healer. So it's just so counterproductive when, these people that just exercise all this hypocrisy and they take the teachings, of Christ, and they desecrate it and they skew it to make it fit their fear-based blueprint of the world and the way that it works. I find it hilarious. And I've also been attacked by Christians, more so than any other, type of people. And ironically enough, it's the one personal attack that I don't take personal, because I understand that they are not looking at me from a perspective that I can even
have a debate with.
Well, right. And I don't want to say that like I'm above, or it's not that. It's just that it's a limited, when you're in that fear-based space and you can only make judgment based on your fear, it's so limited that I don't even take it personal. It's just not on that level.
You bring up a good point. And for all those out there that if you're taking what I'm saying the wrong way because of your beliefs, please, don't. That's not my point, because I was that guy 12 years ago. I was literally the guy 12 years ago that I just talked about. Writing comments, man, you don't believe in Jesus? What's wrong with you? And here's the thing, like all the research that I've done into these ancient texts, not only the Gnostic texts, the Hebrew texts, but even other scriptures from around the world, I definitely think Christ existed. I definitely think Jesus walked the earth. I just find it very difficult, because when you read about Jesus in the New Testament, first of all, they manipulated his birth date. They manipulated his name. I mean, what haven't they manipulated about him? And where was he for 32 years? I mean, what about all the missing years? What was he doing then? Where did that go? So I used to be under the mindset of faith. Got to have faith. Yes, faith is key. Faith is dire. Faith is very important to have. Yet you should also, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, this is where I have transferred my energy, is if I'm going to put all my bells and whistles into one thing, if I'm going to put everything in there, all my treasures into one thing, I want to know what's right. I don't want to just have faith and be like, man, I believe in you. I believe in you. And especially when there's so much stuff out, if there wasn't so much contradicting stuff, that's another thing too, is all the contradictory. It's like there's so many things that just don't make sense. And then when you ask the supposed expert that supposedly knows more than you because he's a high-end scholar that's stuck in his own box, and then you start to school that person, and they start to itch their head and say, oh, you get out of here, man. I can't answer that. Just get out of here. Jesus loves you, but no, you're going to hell.
Right.
All right, guys. 10% tithing. Come on, man. 10%.
Oh, God.
All right, I'll stop. It's the kombucha.
You're digging yourself a hole, Rex.
It's getting deep in here. I'm going to jump in. No, I'm just kidding.
So, and what's interesting about that is that what we're looking at is faith. We're looking at the difference between faith and knowing. And some Christians and some Christianity, and I'm not an expert on Christianity. I'm not. I'm more of a pagan than anything else. But I think what we do is we take it from, oh God, I'm going to get torn apart for that, aren't I? Oh gosh. Anyways, I don't care. Let's
talk about it. I was going to say pagan. Okay. Let me tell you what the old definition of pagan was, ladies and gentlemen. It was one that was with nature.
Yes.
One that was with nature. Does that mean that you are a devil, demon worshiping antichrist because you're one with nature?
Mm-hmm.
Pagan. All right, go ahead. Please answer what is your definition of a pagan, so people don't like.
Well, and listen.
She's a pagan.
Yeah, exactly. So for me, I've always been a pagan without actually calling myself a pagan, because it's just it's a label, and although it does have its textbook definition, for me, I happen to believe that the constructs that we consider the deities, the demigods, the gods, and the goddesses, they exist both in and of themselves, and also as a product of the human psyche. So it's a co-creation. Some people say that they've been here before us, but that's kind of when we're limiting things. We're taking things from the 4 and 5D and above level down to 3D to kind of put things in chronological order. But that, I just know that it transcends that. It's more than that. And just to go back just a little bit, the faith thing, as opposed to just the knowing, that's where initiation into Hermetics will change the game. Because what you realize is that you don't have to have faith. You don't have to cling to a belief or something that somebody told you. You don't have to fight for your faith, because you are part of the fabric of the universe. You're no more and you're no less. You are part of it. And that's the liberty that comes from studying this stuff, is that you realize that, you know, even the construct that we're in right now. So this time-space continuum that we're in, this matrix that we're in, we are made of the same stuff that it is. And they don't want us to know that, because just like Neo in the Matrix, we will then be able to manipulate these magnetic structures and these electric structures that the controllers use. They desecrate, and they use our manifestation abilities to reinforce this fabric. Once we realize that we are really in and of it, we're made of the same stuff, we can crumble it, and then we can then manifest things instantly, and we're not, you know, oppressed by this, you know, some people call it a simulation. And that's a whole nother thing. But, you know, when it comes to the gods and the goddesses, for me, what I found was not that I needed to worship a being that was outside of myself in order to feel strong or loved or powerful. And it's the same thing with Jesus Christ, is people, they cry to see him. They love, it's, you know, and I've seen people light up. I've seen Christians speak about their Savior, and I see that genuine glow, that genuine passion, and they truly do feel loved by their Father. And, you know, it's hard to get mad at that. And that's kind of where intention comes into play. Is I have a deity, her name is Hecate, and she means the world to me. She's like my sky mommy, you know what I mean? But I also understand that what she is, what helps me to understand her and myself, is that we are ultimately of the same fabric, and that she's not better. She is not.
Do you think she's your guardian angel?
No. And so much so when we talk about guides and guardian angels, I'm really, the way I understand it, is that all they are is fragments of ourselves, the higher self. At least that's what I would suggest that people strive for, is not to kind of communicate with things that you don't understand or you don't know. Don't just flip through a book and just start summoning this person or that person. These are archetypes. These are beings that exist within us. And when we worship them or we pray to them, we are aligning ourselves with that energy that is them, that we would identify as being them. And so that's how I understand it. And that's, you know, I get a lot out of paying respect and gratitude to those that have come before me. So my ancestors, and also these, you know, these deities that I feel I recognize in myself. You know, there's Athena or Minerva, whatever you'd like to call them. There's Aphrodite, there's Thoth, there's Jesus Christ, there's Hecate. There's all these beings, these energies that we can benefit from if we're responsible, and if it helps to understand the nature of what they are. But you don't have to cling to a faith, because it's there. It's, you know what I mean? It's when dogma comes into the picture, and the rules, and if you don't do it this way, you're condemned. That's all a lie. And if you can't figure that out by now, you know, I'm sorry, but that's your problem. And the only real
Timeshare.
What's that? Oh no,
You want to buy a timeshare?
No, I don't.
I just figured, you know, that's a good time. You say timeshare. That's my new thing. When people start, like, that's the trigger word now.
Yeah.
When they're believing something that might not be what they think it is, kind of like a timeshare. You know, you go into a timeshare presentation, you know, it's an hour and a half. They're like, oh, it's only going to be 90 minutes. We'll give you a few tickets to go to these shows. Oh, come on. You can get out soon. No big deal. We'll be nice to you. 5 hours later, you're like, your leg is bleeding as you're trying to leave the place, and they're like grabbing on your leg and stuff like that. I would never want to go on vacation and then have to sit through a timeshare presentation to get a free gift anyway. But so many people do it. And then they get sold on a timeshare that's, you know, oh, it's only $1,500 a year maintenance fee, and you'll get a beautiful week a year in this luxurious resort in Branson, Missouri. Yes, it's off season, but you're going to love it. You might not be able to work it, you know, and you can get it on eBay for $1 on the aftermarket, but we're going to sell it to you here at the resort for $25,000 because you just love it. You just love it. Timeshare.
Oh no, and that's just awful. And there's almost kind of what I'm seeing is a translation of that in the media and in entertainment, in terms of like fast, easy magic, fast, easy hexes and spells that will get the job done real quick. That is not to say that people don't have instantaneous manifestation power, and that small rituals, throughout the day work. I know that it's practical and that it works. But the problem is that people are starting to forget that there are very serious spiritual ramifications, whether you do positive, whether it's positive or negative, there's always, it reverberates. There's no stopping it. It's matter. It doesn't change. It transmutes. So, but for example, right after Trump was elected, there was a huge thing. All the witches and warlocks across the United States got together and did a mass ritual hexing the President Trump. And
they did a blood ritual.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, you want to talk about, spiritual contracts. When there's blood involved and that kind of energy and people know that you're doing it, one of the most powerful tools that a magician has is their secrecy, is their privacy, is their relationship with it. So when you're putting it on display and you're doing a recorded ritual in a high profile location and everybody knows what you're doing, not only do you strip yourself of the potency, the potency of it is gone. You now open yourself up to, tenfold. There are laws in place. There are rules in place. It doesn't matter if you don't like the guy or not. You can't just throw that stuff around lightly. And yeah.
I want to add to that because you're so right. And I remember talking to you about that a few months ago. And I was giving you some ideas that I had in my mind about things, and you told me your opinions, and I really appreciate that. And I think that it is absolutely fascinating when they promote a blood mural of the President of the United States, a full-on blood mural, where they took several dozen entertainers' blood and they painted this mural anti-President Trump with blood. And whether you believe in it or not, folks, blood is one of the most powerful elements in magic. Now, think about this for a second. Would your body be alive without blood? And then we can get into even deeper stuff about how the planet blood, the blood life of the planet, the petroleum that we're just constantly sucking out of the planet by fracking it. And then you wonder, okay, if there's entities that latch onto these blood rituals, which we know there are these parasitic archon, serpent-like beings, or even talked about in the Emerald Tablets of Thoth that talk about these archon beings that will actually show up when these blood rituals are done. So once again, blood mural of President Trump, of multiple people putting together their energy and their blood into one archetype. And yes, there's going to be shit that's pardon my language, there's going to be stuff that's attached to that. And then you get into how much, like I said, once again, look at all the petroleum that we're pulling out of the planet. You don't think there's things that are attached to that? You don't think that because you can't see it with your physical eyes that it's not having an implication on the planet? The planet is a living being. I mean, it does feed us. It does help water us. It does give us what we need to survive. And then you can say, oh, no, that's all Jesus. Jesus gives us all that. Okay. Well, Jesus gave us the earth then, okay? And now you're living in the earth. Take care of it. And even if okay, let's say that we do reincarnate on planet Earth. What is it going to be like here 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now? What is it going to be like for your kids, for your grandkids, for your great-great-grandkids? Think about that. And I hope that there's somebody out there that's listening to this podcast right now that has enough money to make a difference at that level. And for all of you that aren't multi-billionaires, let's take our mind power and create the change. Because mind power is worth a lot more than money. Money is just physical. Let's just figure out a way to make things better for everybody, ladies and gentlemen. That is so key. How do we make this world a better place? Seriously. How do we create balance? How do we get rid of these giant industries that profit off of keeping us suppressed and destroying the planet? Literally. What do we do in a nonviolent fashion? Is there a way that we can come up with ideas and a mindset to literally make a difference? That's what I want to know. What do you think, Jenny?
Oh man, well, the healing comes to mind because, the collective psyche of humankind is so scarred, and those scars alone make us very susceptible to all different kinds of continued programming and all kinds of escape routes. So it is kind of like you said, I really do feel that a lot of us incarnated here and now. I mean, we've been here a bunch of times, but there's a fight, there's a battle. I also believe that it's already been won. So what we're experiencing right now is just kind of like a 3D playing out of going through the motions. But, you described the planet as being a living, breathing entity. I couldn't agree with you more. this realm that we exist on here, the planet Earth, it is intelligent, it's divine. And, the iron in the dirt, we have iron in our blood, and the calcium, all of these elements, these trace elements and these materials that exist naturally in the earth also exist naturally inside of us. So we're one and the same, we're a part of it. And I think we've talked about this before, where the planet, this realm, is in danger. We are in danger of destroying, the earth, not even so much the earth, but where we're going. It looks like we're going to co-sign on our own demise. They're going to do it technologically. They're going to do it with the food, the vaccines. They're making us sign our own death warrants. And I think that what the earth has done, since it is intelligent, it is divine, it has worked with genetic pools and soul families, and we come in at certain times to fight the good fight. And when we're talking about Hermetics, Franz Bardon in his teachings, their biggest fear is that housewives can manifest, it really does come down to like the average person coming into knowledge, coming into this practical application of magic. And magic, if you don't like the label, you can call it prayer, because it really is the same thing. And that's just, it's your consent, it's your frequency. And what do we do? I don't know, Rex, what do? We do this. We keep doing this, and those that are meant to hear the message are going to hear it, and those that aren't ready, and that's okay. I think that it would give you a lot of peace and me a lot of peace to just kind of accept that not everybody is going to figure it out this time around. And that's okay. It's not our job to jump up and down to wake everybody else up. This is very much a personal journey. It's everybody. Everybody's a hermit. Everybody's a star. You know what I mean? And I think that on a fundamental level, on an individual level, that's where the change starts. So when you say be the change that you want to see, I can't think of anything better than that, because really, essentially, that's what this comes down to. And that's why I think, and Franz, his magic, I attribute his magic and his essence and his gift to the world. Part of the waves of his magic brought, made this connection between you and me possible. Because if he hadn't have written that book or, expressed that to the world, I might never have been blessed with the opportunity of our friendship. And that means a lot to me. To me, that's magic manifesting. Because now I can talk to people and reach people that I probably wouldn't have had the opportunity to, and that's because I followed my alignment. I was in alignment with my truest purpose, and it really brought me to where I needed to be. So it really is about being true to yourself and taking little steps and not getting drawn into the division. Like, it really is that simple. It really is that kumbaya, unfortunately.
That's beautiful. I mean, I can't think of a better way to put it. That was brilliant. And please let our audience know what your website is, because I know that you work with people all the time and you do an amazing job. So,
yeah, thanks for that, Rex. So my website is moonstonemusings.com. So obviously Moonstone isn't my real name, but it really kind of took off, so I'm running with it. And you can find me on Facebook. I'm good friends with Rex. I'm friends with Heidi. And Heidi Vandenberg of Channel 27, she is phenomenal. She's an amazing chart reader, astrologist, just personality. She's just explosive and awesome, and we love her. And I love what I do. This has given me an opportunity to reach people that I wasn't going to be able to reach, or it would have taken me years to get to this level of exposure. So I'm really grateful to you for that. And I've been able to really help a lot of people, and it just makes my whole life to find out, to hear from clients that I'm helping them. And, I do tarot readings, I do intuitive readings, psychic readings, I do Skype, phone, things like that. So yeah, just reach out to me. I love meeting new people. And again, thank you, Rex. You always put me at ease. You know how I am. I'm like, oh my God, like I'm gonna throw off. I can't do it. But you're so talented, and I love you, and thank you for everything.
Well, thank you. And I paid her to say that, ladies and gentlemen. There were thank you so much, Jenny. You're amazing. You really are. And we have a few questions from the audience, if you would be interested in answering one of them. And the first one is, what type of shampoo you use? But no, don't answer that. That was, somebody did ask that, but that was, you know, I know they were joking. The question that this person has that is a little bit more about chematology. Yeah, I'm not familiar with that term before. That I'm ignorant on that. So
yeah. Well, I'm actually certainly not an authority on that. But from what I understand, Kemet is from Egypt. Kemet, the root of meaning black land or black earth. That's my understanding, is that it originated in Egypt. Something about the black having to do with the fertility of the soil, and also could be arguably the magical powers in black. I wear black all the time because it's my magic color. I love this color. But yeah, I mean, Hermetic, people say that Hermetic is derived from Kemetic. There's nothing new under the sun. People have been studying this for thousands and thousands of years. This is ancient. And I would like to see an integral, people bringing this information out, not reinventing it, but resurging it into the population responsibly, and teaching about, not being reckless with this, not being irresponsible with it, because there's a lot of good to be gained with this knowledge. I hope we're ready.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely. I certainly do. And I would like to thank the audience for listening. I know that there's been quite a bit of people listening to this live the entire time. So thank you for joining us. Much appreciated. Make sure to check out Jenny's website for sure. And you've done a couple of readings on the show before, and just eerie accurate. I mean, you're so good at the readings that you do. I think it's amazing. And I need to have you pull a couple cards for me one of these days. And that's usually something that I, don't dive too deep into, but I think it's fascinating how well and how good you are at it. Because you can also pull a card, and then you're able to describe it in a sense that just, it's like you're in that person's mind. So you're very, very good at it. And, thank you again for coming on the show. Keep up the good energy. And also, ladies and gentlemen, make sure to become a contributing member at Leak Project if you haven't already, because you'll get access to exclusive content. I've got a premium section for members only there that'll be downloadable, streamable, and your contributions greatly help Leak Project. I want this thing to be so... how do I put this? I want to give you guys as much information as I can. If there's a story in Timbuktu or Taiwan or Chichen Itza, I want to be able to give it to you guys. I want to be able to share it all with you. I know a lot of you guys are stuck in the grind, 9 to 5, 9 to 9. You work very hard at your jobs. And I just appreciate you being here listening. There was a couple people that said, Rex, I would love to be a premium member. I just don't have the money right now. Hey, I totally get it. Just listening to the podcast on YouTube is definitely helping out Leak Project. So share them far and wide. Thank you for being here. And remember what Jenny said. Be the change you want to see. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you.